I first found out about Bridgend from a gentleman from Wales who was talking to me about Gloucester Girls, the story of the 18 Massachusetts high school girls who reportedly in the press made a pact to become pregnant. While discussing it, the gentleman said to me, there's a town an hour and a half north of London called Bridgend. It's actually South Wales. And the bodies of 14 children had been found, and they were all hanged the same way. Many people in the town suspected a serial killer, thought maybe a serial killer was disguising the deaths. Other people thought that there might be a suicide cult, and it piqued my interest. When I got to Bridgend, the bodies began piling up. I was stunned. There was an embargo on the press not to talk about it. There was a gag order in Parliament. No one would discuss what was going on. My crew and I were actually in danger. Sometimes people were adamant about us not uncovering this story, but in a month I found 40 bodies and thought this is something that really needs a light shining on it. I found it amazing that nobody was ever comfortable talking about suicide, that I could network my way to families of suicide victims, and there was a shame, there was a quietness, a guilt, a feeling of maybe they were somehow responsible for the death of their loved one. And I realized very early on that no one is comfortable talking about suicide. If you lose a child or a loved one to cancer or leukemia or a car accident, you can wrap your head around it, you can understand what has happened. But when someone you love puts a rope around their neck, intentionally ends their life, the guilt, the remorse, the lack of closure is overwhelming. And I wanted to shine a light on this. Doing my research for this project, I found out that suicide is the second leading cause of death in the United States for 10-year-olds, for 11-year-olds, for 12-year-olds, for 13-year-olds. It's an overwhelming statistic. For the first time in the history of the United States since Henry Ford invented the automobile, more citizens died last year by their own hand, by their own methods, than were killed in car accidents. To get a license to drive a car in the United States, you need to be educated, take a test, read a book, study a manual. That's because there's an element of danger, risk involved in operating a motor vehicle. But more Americans now kill themselves than are killed on US roads and highways, which is staggering to me, which is an overwhelming statistic. If you have a parent, a child, a sibling, or a spouse who has taken their own life, statistically, there's a 50% chance that's how you'll die. Not saying it's a guarantee, but if your parent, your child, your sibling, your spouse, your significant other takes their life, there's a huge statistic that that's how your life will end, because it is a little contagious. And when I got to Bridgend and realized just how contagious suicide is, I felt that it was something that the world needs to know, that it's an important issue that we sweep under a rug. And if we continue to sweep it under a rug, as we see now, we have a lumpy rug. Most of the suicide victims did not leave notes, so we're left guessing as to why they commit suicide. It's an epidemic, it's a pandemic. People are killing themselves in greater numbers than ever before in the history of the world. Sweden has an outrageous suicide rate. The UK's suicide rate is just astronomical. We have children killing themselves because they're gay, killing themselves because they get exposed to the wrong drugs, killing themselves because they're bullied, killing themselves because they come from dysfunctional families. It's a pandemic. It needs to stop. We need to educate our society more. We teach our children, don't smoke cigarettes, don't take drugs, don't drink and drive. We have to teach them, you're not supposed to murder other people, you're not supposed to murder yourself. I want Bridgend to deliver that message, to hopefully be an instrument to raise awareness, have people realize that the world is not hopeless, that there are solutions to problems, that suicide is a permanent solution to a very temporary problem. I do believe in the power of change, and I can remember someone saying to me, it's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. And my fantasy for Bridgend is that it will find a home, it will find a way into everybody's home, because we need to change as a society, as a world. We need to change. If If you break your leg, you can go to the doctor and get it fixed. But if your heart is broken, if you're depressed, if you've suffered a trauma, if you've lost a loved one, if you're at the end of your rope and you reach despair, there's not a lot of help. There aren't a lot of social agencies or services to really protect someone like that. And my feeling is we need a society that will not only treat our bodies when they become ill, but will treat our minds or our psyches or our emotions. I wrote I Believe in You because of what was happening around me. It was, if you've ever heard the expression post-traumatic stress disorder, I have this fantasy, I developed a little bit of it while filming Bridge End. When the body count got to 57, something kicked in. I realized that this was not a singular experience. This was not the story of one town or one event. This is a universal issue, and it was traumatizing. I was experiencing palpable traumatic grief, the kind of grief I had never experienced before. When a mother and a father come home at 8 o'clock at night and find their 15-year-old daughter hanging from the light fixture, there were no words to describe the event, the trauma, the emotions involved. And then if you add to that the guilt, the lack of closure, the lack of understanding what moved someone to that point, what motivated someone to end their life, that life was so filled with despair. I remember going back to the hotel I was staying in and I thought, why aren't you people, why aren't you children believing in yourself? You're beautiful, you're young, you have your whole life ahead of you. I believe in you, I believe in love, I believe in prayer, I believe in a better way. And it came out, it was my frame of mind, it was what I was experiencing emotionally. And I never decide to write a song about a topic. It's just not how my muse works. My thought is that we all live in the world, we're all experiencing what we're experiencing. Our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions come pouring in, our experiences, and that just really germinates whatever I'm feeling and whatever comes out in a music. I never sit down. I'm embarrassed to say that I've never felt professional writing music, because I know a lot of people will sit down and they'll get out their charts and their graphs and this note and that. I don't write like that. Sometimes I can be sleeping and I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think I hear a CD playing, and I'll think, oh, it's in my head, and I'll go downstairs to my piano and I'll turn on my tape recorder and I'll play the song I hear, and I feel the words, I feel the music, I feel something, and I write it down, I record it, and then the next day, the next week, the next month, I'll press play in the tape recorder and think, oh wow, I really love that song. A World Without Love wrote itself, and I felt very strongly about the message, and it wasn't that I was proselytizing or intentionally trying to deliver a message, but when you spend a couple of years working with families and children whose best friends and brothers and sisters have taken their own lives, have committed suicide, you realize that these people feel very much like they're living in a world without love. And it impacted on me that today we're connected and LinkedIn and global and online, but we're lonelier than ever. Suicide rates are higher than they've ever been. And even though we're connected in a way, we're now more disconnected, because to be connected, you can be in your room all by yourself day in and day out, thinking you're in real relationships, but we're not. And a world without love is a cold, horrible place to be. And I just felt very strongly that so many of these children who had committed suicide, so many people feel it. They're in a cold, callous, uncaring world. My message is there is a world with love. Gloucester Girls was an amazing project to work on. I remember the first headline I read, 18 or 17 Massachusetts Gloucester High School girls have been reported to have made a pact to become pregnant, which seemed crazy because as the father of two daughters, I'm well aware that it's tough to get two girls to agree on one thing, never mind 18 girls to get together and all decide to do the same thing at the same time. So the journalist in me sought to investigate it, and I learned pretty quickly on that these girls did not make a pact to become pregnant. And the story took a life of its own. The story took on a life of its own because no one really wanted to know the story. The press and the media was very determined to glamorize a story of 18 girls who all got together and had sex and would make babies and bring up their children together. It's not what happened. It was shocking to find out that, interestingly enough, there were 18 girls in Gloucester High School that year who became pregnant. There were 100 girls in Springfield High School that year who were pregnant. But it didn't make the paper because there were no rumors of a pact, and it wasn't a salacious, enticing, sexualized story. After filming Gloucester Girls and Bridge End, I was overwhelmed in a sense of what exists in our world today, what some people go through in their daily lives, how tough life is, just how tough life is for some people. And it seems that we're inundated with war, with poverty, with homelessness, with drug addiction, suicide, lack of hope, lack of faith. And our mother came to me while those thoughts were swirling around in my head. Young boys go off to war, young women go off to war, they don't come back, or they come back injured, or suffering the effects of what they've been through. Our hospitals are filled with cancer patients and people dealing with oncology and chemotherapy and radiation. And while I was making the film, I was in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, which is a really wealthy town. It's just amazing to see how many homeless people are on the street. And it just all came together. And that's what Our Mother was about. And I thought, okay, regardless of your religion or if you're religious or what you believe in, we live in a very patriarchal society. It's very acceptable to pray to Our Father. And I was thinking, maybe that's not working anymore. Maybe instead of praying to our Father, or in addition to praying to our Father, maybe we should start praying to our Mother. Even if that's Mother Earth or the universe or whatever you believe in, we should look for help wherever we can get it. And that's what Our Mother was about. Now, after filming Gloucester and getting to know these girls and their stories and their backgrounds and where they came from and what their experiences in life was, I will never look at another young pregnant girl and not think, I wonder what her story is. I wonder what happened to her. I wonder how this came to be. Because if you're protected, if you're taken care of, if you're educated, if you're given the right message, if you're supported in a certain way by your parents, by your families, you shouldn't be having babies at 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds. So it's reflective of our society. I now look at young pregnant girls and I think, what happened? Who let you down? How did this happen? I was excited to do the I Believe in You trilogy because I felt it tied in so many experiences that I was having at the time. I was dealing with young girls who were pregnant and having babies at 14 and 15 years old. I was dealing worse with children that age who were hanging themselves and despairing and giving up on life. I wanted to tell a story. And if you watch I Believe in You, and then you watch A World Without Love, and then you watch Our Mother, and you watch them together, it's one short film. And it's the journey of this group of people who are all very connected to each other, like we are in the world. And it was an exciting project for me because I wanted each song and each music video to stand on its own, but I wanted people to become familiar with the characters and connect to them. And I think the actors in the videos were amazing. They were real and they were beautiful and they were typical and people that we could relate to. And everybody has walked by a homeless person. Everybody knows someone who's gone off to war. Everyone knows someone who's been through oncology. Everyone has a need to, we want to hear I love you, I believe in you. If you say to someone I believe in you, that's as good as saying I love you. Creating a visual for my music is always an interesting and challenging experience, and I love it because it's the one part of my art that I don't seek to totally control. And that's because I know everyone views the world differently. So if I use, for an example, A World Without Love, for one person, they're moved at the loss of a parent. For someone else, it's the loss of a lover, maybe the loss of a child, maybe the loss of a limb, or the loss of a job or a house. It's subjective, and I try never to be too literal or want to own too much what my visuals look like, because I feel that a true piece of art should allow the viewer to experience their emotions, their feelings, what they get from it. That the art shouldn't be about the artist, it should be about the viewer. So when it comes to my music videos, and I really prefer to think of them as short films, I hope that the audience relates to it. I was deeply affected by the reaction to I Believe in You. I didn't expect a Time magazine to call and say, I'd like to talk to you about the story. I didn't expect 40 or 50 million people to watch it and like it or love it. I never thought it would reach an audience that vast. I was humbled, I was moved, but I felt further convinced that I am onto something, that we all want someone to believe in us. And we want someone to care about us, and someone to believe in us, to believe in love, to believe in a better place, a better way. And I think that's what made the video so powerful, is that it was pretty simple. It was just a piano and a vocal, and a homeless man, and a young girl, and a young boy, and a sick woman, and something we see in our lives all the time. So I think in its simplicity that it cast a wide net and people were able to relate to it. So I am proud of it. I feel I owe the people of Bridgend and the girls from Gloucester who trusted me with their stories, who took me into their confidence and let me share with them their traumas, their pain, their grief, their struggle. I owe them not only a debt of gratitude, but a way of telling their story so that others will hopefully not have to go through it. The only way maybe people will stop killing themselves is if they can see what kind of trauma and grief and pain they leave behind. When a parent finds the body of their 15-year-old hanging from a light fixture, they never recover. They never sleep well again. They never have another happy day. There is no closure. It's just palpable traumatic grief, day in and day out. I want to tell their stories as they told them to me. And I want people to see these stories and learn from them so that history stops repeating itself.
I believed in love. What I'm thinking of. Love is so appealing. Oh, it's so revealing. I believe in prayer. How else would I be here when my heart would falter? You would guide me there. So I believe You know what I can do. Put my love on hold again. Now I'm so much older than. Take my soul or go.